Chapter 5. What a way to start a new life. Suddenly there was a big jerk and everyone was flung back against the wall. They realized they had smashed through an enormous rock, yet the ship was left undamaged, and so was the rock. They all stood still, making sure everything was safe. Peter was the first one to take a step back, and as he did, out of nowhere came 17 NASA agents bursting in with guns. "Put your hands up!" shouted the tallest one, taking slow steps towards Ronan, Peter, and Patrick S. "You two run outside and I'll take care of them," shouted Patrick S., almost regretting every word as it slipped out of his mouth. Peter and Ronan did as asked and carefully proceeded down the ladder. As soon as they stepped out, they realized that the chemicals in the air was the same as Earth. They looked around, and the first thing that they saw on the vast rocky landscape was not what they wanted. A creature about the size of 4 sofas stacked up and along, with a long scaly back, was bounding towards them, roaring and screaming in hunger. "What the heck is that?" shouted Peter, pointing to the huge beast before them. Ronan began to lift his hand up to speak in the comm. "Hey, Pat, could we get some help here, possibly?" All he could hear was the sound of gunshots and screams of terror. There wasn't a reply for a short while. "I'm kind of busy right now," replied Patrick S. The monster carried on bounding towards them. Peter pulled out a gun and aimed where he assumed the heart to be. "Should I do it?" asked Peter, almost trembling. Ronan turned to face Peter with a sarcastic look on his face. "What do you think? We're going to die if you don't," shouted Ronan. Peter pulled the trigger on the gun, and the bullet shot straight in the beast's heart as it roared out in agony and smashed to the floor. "Well, that was surprisingly easy," said Peter, staring at the corpse in confusion. "Yeah, but it wasn't the last of them," exclaimed Ronan. Suddenly the ground began to shake as something emerged from a mountain in front of them. A huge shape the size of a skyscraper smashed open the top of the mountain and began to menacingly traverse towards them. Suddenly, Peter received a comm message from Patrick S. saying he needed help, leaving Ronan to fight the beast on his own. Ronan quickly studied the beast and remembered what Peter told him once they were through the second wormhole. The enormous beast in front of him was a kaiju. Suddenly, it began to sprint faster and faster towards Ronan until it was only a few feet away from him. It raised its fist and swung it with full force at Ronan's body. He let out a scream of agony as his body made contact with the kaiju's fist, and he was flung back against the grass, falling unconscious. Back in the ship, Peter and Patrick S. had just finished off their last NASA agents and went outside to see how the fight was going. Immediately, they saw the kaiju smashing up the vast landscape, so Peter pulled out a C4 the size of a window, threw it onto the kaiju, and pressed the detonator button. The kaiju roared with pain as blue goo, blood, splattered everywhere. Next, they found Ronan's body lying in a ditch. They took aboard the ship and began surgery. It lasted for 5 hours and then left him there for 24 hours. The next day, Patrick S. and Peter were just getting the preparations to start building the city. Ronan put on a cloak, a hood, and a mask to cover up all the bandages on his face. He walked out to find lots of cement mixers and bricks ready to be turned into buildings. Patrick S. and Peter were waiting outside with smiles on their faces. "Ready to start a new life?" asked Patrick S. Ronan smiled and said, "I was born ready." "Well, in that case, let's get building."